Hello everybody, today I'm showing you how I choose my watercolor paint for my new plein air palette and how I use them in my paintings. After I set up this palette in the previous video, I have been painting with these paints for about a week and I think I need to do some small changes. I have taken away the only honey-based paint Anthraquinone Blue from Amgram because it was a lot messier than I expected. It got stuck on my pinky the other day while I was painting and I got a big blue stain on the side of my hand. So I'm just glad that it happened at home, not outside somewhere, and I have to replace it with another PB60 paint from Winsor Newton. I also noticed that the monte amiata natural sienna is getting used up much more quicker than the rest of the colors, so I'm going to switch this one to a bigger pan when I'm finished with it. I also been using the perylene green a lot more than just value studies, so I'm moving it closer to the green mixing area. So that's my first week's update about this palette. I have tried these mixing charts before, but I just don't have the patience for it. And it doesn't really represent how I use this color anyway. I prefer to mix them on the paper and see how they react to each other. I'm mapping out all the colors here in a color wheel. This is a very fun and useful way to get to know the relationship between all the colors on a palette. For me, I just get whatever artist quality paint that is most easily accessible and affordable to me. I don't think there is any magical paint that can save a terrible quality paper or a bad composition, so I try not to get too obsessive about it. And by the way, I chose the color wheel with this orientation because it's similar to what I use in Procreate. I will start to talk about my colors from yellow and then green to blue to purple and pink, and then red, orange, and then back to the earth tones. I used to have the split primary colors that are very often recommended to beginners. So I had lemon yellow as cool yellow and new gamboge as the warm one. But when I was using it, I find myself constantly wanting to mix these two colors together. So much so that I squeeze them in the same pan so that I can mix them as I dip my brush in there. So after a while, I started to look for a medium yellow. I was reading Liz Still's blog and saw that she uses Hansa Yellow Medium. So I tried this color too, but I find it to be a bit too strong and opaque for my liking. And this is when investing in a dot card can be super useful. I was able to narrow down my choices to Winsor Yellow and Chromium Yellow Light Hue from SCHMINCKE. I'm currently using the Chromium Yellow Hue Light. I think when I'm finished with this tube, I'm going to try the Winsor Yellow to see which one do I prefer better. But so far, I only have good things to say about this paint. It dries beautifully smooth and re-wets really easily. It is highly transparent, medium staining, and I find it to be a very convenient primary yellow. Now we're moving on to the greens. I think we often hear about split primaries, but not very much about split greens or purples. To me, having a warm and cool version of green is just as important as the primaries, if not even more important. I chose green gold as my warm green, and I can mix almost all kinds of natural greens with this paint. By natural, I mean like trees and leaves and meadows and foliage. It doesn't have that neon feeling that comes with lemon yellow sometimes. Even when I use it straight out of the tube and let it mix wet on the paper, I can get a huge variety of greens with this paint, and I can always trust it to bring temperature shifts in my greens because how yellow it is. My cool green on this palette is Viridian. This paint is not a very natural looking color, and that makes it perfect for man-made things like road signs or commercial boards or banners. Those things are very common in urban scenes. I know a lot of people think it's difficult to mix greens, and I sure did. And if you look at the color wheel, the color green has taken almost a quarter of the wheel, but we only have one name to describe this entire area. That is the reason I think it's important to have a warm green and a cool green. Now back to Viridian. I think it is a very versatile color. I can mix it with a tiny bit of phthalo blue to get this very bright turquoise color like sunlit tropical water. And if I need to mix a super bright green, such as a field of fresh green grass under the sun, I can use viridian to mix with chromium yellow hue light to get this almost digital or anime looking green. The other green color I have is perylene green from Winsor Newton. I first added this color for value studies, but now I realize that it's also very useful to darken the shadow parts of foliage and plants. Now we're moving on to the blue family. I replaced manganese blue hue with phthalo blue green shade. They are both made with PB15, so there's not a huge difference in light washes. But phthalo blue is a lot stronger when mixed with dark colors like indigo, and it can get very dark itself. I have used it with ultramarine to paint man-made blue things like road signs or people's t-shirts and backpacks. It's also very powerful for mixing greens. I consider this color to be an accent color, so it's enough to just have a tiny amount of it. The next color is my new favorite. It's called Mountain Blue from SCHMINCKE. On itself, it's a really sweet and soft sky color with a bit of pastel look to it. I really love mixing this color with green gold for my go-to foliage green mixture. Mountain Blue and green gold are like two good friends that never overpower each other in any situation. That's why I'm keeping a separate pan of this paint for mixing greens. And of course, I also have the Ultramarine Finest. This color is my first love in watercolor world. I used to use ultramarine all the time to mix with other colors, but now I have two other paints with PP29 in it. That's the Mountain Blue and SCHMINCKE's Ultramarine Violet. I have a feeling that I might need it somehow, like mix it with indigo and play with the color temperature. I just can't imagine have a palette without it. Okay, our next blue is indigo. I used to have a tube of Rembrandt's indigo. I don't know how I broke this tube, but the paint will come out of this corner if I squeeze the tube. And I also think the drying shift is too drastic. It starts looking like this inky blue sky color, but when it dries, it just became so dull that it almost looked like Payne's Gray to me. So I decided to test a new one from Winsor Newton, and it's a more colorful indigo. It looked really nice in green mixtures. And of course, both indigo and indanthrene blue are very classic night sky colors. I keep both of them on the palette because I feel like they're like twins. They're a bit different, but they cannot replace each other. And I'm still trying this new one from Winsor Newton. I think it's too early for me to say if I like it or not, but so far I really enjoy using it. Now we're moving up to the purples and violet. Purple is also a color that I want to have a warm and cool version of. My bluish purple is Ultramarine Violet from SCHMINCKE. It's made with PB15 and PP29. I think it's a similar color as lavender, but because it's transparent, it can be mixed with earthy colors for really beautiful shadows. That's why I surround the gray mixing area with sepia, burnt sienna, and ultramarine violet. I can easily mix my own version of natural tint or shadow violet here. Or I can also let them mix on paper to get some very interesting color shift in the shadows. This is a comparison with the color lavender from Rosa Gallery. I also love to use this color for cast shadows, especially cast shadows on white background. Sometimes I mix it with a tiny amount of blue to dull it down ever so slightly and paint the cast shadows like this. And it immediately creates this feeling of a bright, toasty, sunny day, and it also helps to establish the position of the wall or the ground. I think Claude Monet has once said fresh air is violet, and this is my understanding of it. And because this violet has so much blue in it, it doesn't look off when I use it to desaturate the shadow part of green foliage. It doesn't turn the green to brown, so it keeps the freshness, and I really love to indicate the shadow part of foliage like this. And I also just discovered this paint called Smalt from Winsor Newton. It is a very similar color, but maybe a tiny bit more vibrant. It's a single pigment color made with PB15, and I will be testing this color in my studio palette to see if it does a better job than SCHMINCKE's Ultramarine Violet. My warm purple is also called Ultramarine Violet from Daniel Smith. It's a much warmer purple that leans towards the red side of the color wheel. I think it's really great for florals, but I mostly use it for neutralizing yellowish earth tones. Mixing it with colors like yellow ochre gives a kind of historical vibe, like the aged wall of a medieval tower or something. I made a little sketch here to show you what I mean. I've heard people say mixing yellow with purple creates very lifeless, muddy gray, but somehow this warm purple mixing with earth tones creates this almost chestnut maroon kind of color, and I really prefer this color so much more than having a burnt umber brown color on the palette. And here I use this purple to mix with burnt sienna and sepia to indicate the faraway dry bushes. The next color on my palette is Quinacridone Rose from Daniel Smith. I think it's a very pretty and very vibrant pink. Tried the more popular Opera Rose, but I didn't like how fluorescent it was. I think compared to the rest of my palette, Opera Rose would be otherworldly bright, and I didn't like that. I like it when my colors can play nicely with each other, especially with their neighbors. Consider Quinacridone Rose to be about the same level of saturation as the other colors here. This paint is probably also an accent color to me. I don't think I will need a huge amount of it, so I might move it to the smallest square pan in the future. Next color, I guess I can say this is my primary red. It is Perylene Scarlet from Daniel Smith, made with PR149. I don't know why I don't see this color being mentioned very often. I didn't want to get it at first because it's a series 3 color that doesn't come in 5mm tubes, but I just couldn't find a good alternative to it. I like how dark this color can get when I use a very thick consistency, and I need a very strong red to paint this kind of signs and words on the streets. It's also very important to me that it doesn't have any pink in it, like alizarin crimson. In my previous video, I mentioned that the transparent pyrrole orange was my least favorite color on the palette. Someone commented about WINSOR orange, so I looked it up, and turns out it is a PO62 benzimidazolone orange. A few weeks ago, I actually almost purchased the Rembrandt's benzimidazolone orange when I saw it in the art supply store, but I just couldn't justify buying a 20mm tube before trying it. I had no idea that WINSOR orange is made with the same pigment, and I'm really glad that they have it, but also mildly annoyed that they don't print that on the dot card. But anyway, so far I really like this color. I think it's like the soft-spoken sister of transparent pyrrole orange. If this color is orange soda, I would describe the pyrrole orange to be the juice concentrate, and I just don't feel like dipping my brush in it. Now let's move on to the earth tones. I really love the color Monte Amiata Natural Sienna from Daniel Smith. I use this color a lot in underpaintings to create this sun-baked glowing look. And it's also very useful to desaturate greens to get the very famous undersea green kind of color. It also looks really great in portraits, but I don't paint portraits enough. I need to work on that. And about burnt sienna and sepia, apart from using them to mix different grays with ultramarine violet, I also use this two color for making rust marks. I think it's a very iconic urban sketching detail to add, and I think it's really charming. I need the paint to be very easy to roulette to get that butter consistency. I actually use a tool for, I guess it's for doing nails. It's very easy to charge the paint into the wet paper and add this rusty melting effect. My last color is titanium white. I wanted this color because I don't have Naples yellow or buff titanium, but with a white paint I can always mix it with other colors to get that milky pastel look. And to my surprise, this paint doesn't cover the ink lines like gouache does. It starts off looking very opaque, but as it dries, it doesn't make the ink line look muddy or pale, and I'm very happy about that. Okay, that's all from me for today. I hope you enjoyed this video and find it helpful in some way. My next video is either going to be a sketchbook tour of 2023 or a watercolor urban sketching, real-time, no talking kind of video. And let me know which one would you prefer to see first. Have a nice day, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye!